Hello and welcome back to the Project Hercules Diaries. Now this isn't an exciting reveal of something fantastic. It is a very familiar sight from a lot of garages on a Sunday afternoon around the country where people have been on motorbike rallies and they're hanging up their tents to dry. So that's the tent. I was away this weekend at the Pheasant Plucker Rally by the 623 Motorcycle Club. Very good indeed. Another great weekend, and we're doing it again in 2 weeks' time. But back to Project Hercules in the actual chop. So today's job is to have a look at how we can fit the gearbox in behind the engine. Now there's plenty of room in there, but I'm also hoping to fit the battery in. So I have a battery box here, literally a battery box, because it is the box that the battery came in, and that's kind of the battery that I'm planning to use. So I'm hoping that will fit inside there behind the gearbox. So I've done a couple of mock-ups beforehand with the cotton reel. What the plan is at the moment is to take these steel plates. I call them scare plates because when you prop them up here and then they fall over after you've forgotten that you haven't clamped them, they make a hell of a noise and they scare the bejesus out of you. So yeah, those are my scare plates. So those plates will be in there on there'll be 3 slots in them to line up with the 3 bolts there, and that will allow us to move the plates backwards and forwards to put the right tension on the primary drive belt. That will be driving the gearbox, which is here. So these plates fit quite nicely over there, quite a nice snug fit. They're in steel and they are too thick at the moment, and the reason that they are too thick is that it means we can machine either the ears on the gearbox or the plates themselves, or just make one side in slightly thinner plate and adjust the offset so that all the chains line up. So I'm going to mock that up now and we'll see how it looks. So there we go, plates are on with a couple of clamps, handy little engineering clamps from the box of clamps next door. Those are in place, and let's put the gearbox in and see how it looks. Actually, what was I thinking? It's not going to fit in there, is it? Because this distance here is larger than the distance in between the flanges of the gearbox, and that's by design because we can machine a part of this end, or we can take something off the plate to make sure that we've aligned the primary drive perfectly. So I'm going to put the gearbox on a piece of wood and take some measurements, but this has been a worthwhile exercise as I have noticed something around the other side. Let's have a look round the other side. Welcome to the other side. This is the other side. So when I put you can't see this by eye, but when I put a vernier across there and a vernier across here, it measures 0.1 of an inch wider at this end than it does at this end. Now that's a bit strange because this is a flat plate and this is a flat plate, and they are completely clamped up together. What I suspect has happened is that the engine casting not being as machined on the edges, some of these aren't quite as wide as some of the other ones, and what's happened is as we clamp the engine in, it's just pulled this plate slightly in a little bit. I say slightly because we're probably about 4 or 5 times the distance this way. So if that plate has been pulled in ever so slightly by the tension of the bolts, it means that this end will be out by 4 times that amount. So it's probably 20 thou bend in this plate. Not a problem at all. The easiest way to prove that is to slacken off all the bolts and measure it again, which I'll do in a few moments, and then it would be a simple matter of just perhaps putting a couple of shims in when it gets tightened back up again, and that problem goes away. It means I can measure the distance across here, and then we know how much we've got available in terms of metal to remove, and then which side of that gearbox we remove it from depends on where the chains are. So by putting the gearbox on some blocks, I'll see how it looks. I'm going to have to buy some chain. I'm going to have to measure the distance between the center of the primary drive pulley and the clutch pulley on the gearbox, and then I can order a belt as well. And when I've got the belt and I've got the chain, I can offer them up with some wood and make some proper measurements with everything straight. I can make sure the chains clear the mudguard. It would be nice to get the tank back by then, so I make sure the chains clear the tank. We did measure that beforehand, but it's nice to have the actual item present, because if necessary we could lower the box slightly by just putting an L-shaped cut in the bottom of there. I did originally think we may have to do that partly to clear the tank, and also just for aesthetic reasons as well, to get the top run of that belt nice and flat to the floor, with the pulleys being different sizes. I wouldn't want the primary belt to be coming uphill or anything like that. So get things looking as neat as possible. So that's what's going on at the moment. Those are the musings. I'll pop the gearbox on some blocks of wood just so you can see how it looks in situ. And there she is. So that's the gearbox in on blocks, just to give an idea of how it's going to look when it's all together. So looking down from the top, you can see that the primary drive is fairly well aligned. Might need to push the gearbox that way slightly. You can see inside here, this gap is roughly about the same each side. I can always measure that, and that's the amount we got to play with on the plates. You can see that this sprocket here is going to clear the wheel, no problem. That sprocket there is also going to clear the wheel, no problem. What I'll do later on is get some string and run the string across, run the string between the centres of here, and see if we can get everything in line just by adjusting sideways the position of the gearbox with the plates. That's the next job. So as usual, some thinking to do, some soul searching, but it looks like the battery's going to fit in behind there, and because there's still a fair bit of adjustment there for the primary belt tension. Chain tension will be taken up by the back wheel. Primary belt tension will be taken up by moving the plates here in the slots. That's the plan. Should work, no problem. When I've got a good idea of distance between centres, I'll buy some belt, I'll buy some chain. When I've got those bits, we should be good to go. So that's what's been going on. As usual, thank you for watching. More updates will follow.